At Mom's birthday, they seated me outside. Then my private jet arrived. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. The wind tugged at the black veil wrapped around my hat as I stood by my husband's grave. People murmured condolences around me, but I barely heard them. My fingers were cold, even with my gloves. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the absence. My son wasn't there. His chair, placed beside mine under the canopy, sat untouched. I had hoped, naively maybe, that he would show up last minute, that the son I raised would come through when it mattered. But instead, my phone buzzed in my purse. I shouldn't have checked it, but I did. There it was. A smiling selfie of him and Melissa, his wife, holding cocktails. The location tag said Leona Wine Bar. The caption read, "Happy birthday to my Queen Two Hearts family, is everything Red Heart." I stared at it for too long, like it might change. My husband's casket hadn't even been lowered into the ground. And here was my son, dressed in a blazer, not to say goodbye to his father, but to toast some overpriced Pinot in a dimly lit lounge. My hand shook. I called him. He answered, voice too casual. "Hey, Mom. Everything okay?" I didn't answer right away. "I just thought maybe you'd be here," I said. He sighed. "Look, we didn't want to cancel Melissa's birthday plan. You know how she gets. She gets birthdays. Your father gets dirt," I said, almost whispering. There was a pause. Then he said it, the line that broke something in. Dad would have understood. "It's Melissa's birthday." And then he hung up. I stood there, staring out at the casket. The priest continued his prayer. The others bowed their heads. I thought of everything his father did for him. The way he'd worked doubles to send him to college. How he co-signed his mortgage. How he gave up retirement so the boy could start his business. Every late-night pep talk, every check written, every sacrifice made. And now this. When the service ended, people hugged me, told me he was in a better place. But I was somewhere darker. I got home and didn't bother changing out of my funeral clothes. I walked straight to the desk drawer in the study, unlocked the file cabinet, and pulled out the will. My fingers stopped shaking. If he could make his choice that easily, so could I. The house was silent that night, almost unnaturally so. I sat at the dining table still dressed in black, my heels kicked off, the pins still clinging to my hair. The wine I poured myself sat untouched beside a blank sheet of paper. I stared at the will, spread open in front of me. His handwriting was still there in the margins, his little notes, his arrows, the way he wanted things fair and even. We'd agreed years ago to split everything 3 ways. 1 house, 1 retirement account, a few modest investments, and a few heirlooms that mattered more sentimentally than they ever would financially. But that was before our son chose a birthday party over a burial. The words he said still echoed in my head like a sharp slap. Dad would have understood. No, he wouldn't have. I picked up the pen. By midnight, the draft was done. I didn't just cut him out. I wrote it clearly and deliberately. Everything. The house, the savings, the car, the heirloom grandfather clock, the diamond earrings from our wedding anniversary, was to be split between our daughter and youngest son. They had both shown up at the funeral, standing beside me, their eyes red and puffy. They held my hands. They carried their grief with dignity. They chose family. And my eldest chose wine and selfies. I wrote a single line for him in the revised will. To my eldest son, I leave a letter. That is all. I printed it, folded it. Then I sat at my husband's old desk and found the stationery we always used for personal notes. I opened the drawer where he used to keep spare stamps. There was 1 envelope left, aged on the corners. I wrote on the front slowly in blue ink. "Since you had plans." The letter inside was short. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I simply reminded him of what his father gave and what he didn't bother to return. I told him I loved him once, but I didn't recognize the man he became. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with our lawyer, Mr. Alden. He'd known my husband and me for 20 years. When I slid the revised will across the desk, he blinked. "This is a significant change," he said, reading it over. "I know." He looked up at me for a long time. "You sure you want to do this?" I nodded. He chose where he stood. "I'm just confirming it on paper." Mr. Alden gave a quiet sigh, then picked up his pen. "All right, then let's make it official." It was exactly 7 days after the funeral when my phone rang. I recognized the number immediately, my eldest son. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, debating whether to let it ring. But curiosity won. "Hello," I said flat without warmth. "Hey, Mom." His tone was upbeat, almost rehearsed. "I was just checking in. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied curtly. "Yeah, tough week. Anyway, I was wondering, has Mr. Alden scheduled the will reading yet?" There it was. No apology. No remorse. Straight to the business of death. "It's already been handled," I said, keeping my voice steady. He paused. "What do you mean handled? I never got anything about it." It was taken care of privately, I replied. There were some updates that didn't require a full gathering. Another pause. This one longer. Wait, did something change? His voice was tighter now. Less casual. Yes. A beat of silence. Can you explain that a little more? He asked. No, I said simply. He gave a short, breathy laugh like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Mom, come on. We're family. You should know better than anyone, I said. That family means different things to different people. The line went quiet again, this time with a heavy, uncomfortable pause. I could almost hear him trying to figure out what I knew, or worse, what I'd done. A few hours later, it was Melissa who called. I didn't pick up. She sent a voice message instead. Her voice had that tight politeness people use when they're seething behind a smile. Hi, just wanted to say we're a little confused over here. We heard there was a private reading of the will, and obviously we weren't notified. Not sure what's going on, but it feels off. I listened without reacting. Then she added, birthdays come once a year, but funerals, there's always a delay or something. We assumed the reading would be scheduled with everyone. That's just how it's usually done in most families. She emphasized most the way someone might emphasize decent. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I opened the letter I had written him, since you had plans, and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. Let them wonder. Let them pace their expensive condo floors in confusion and irritation. Let them reread that wine bar caption, see if they still felt proud of it. I had no interest in explaining myself to people who thought death was flexible, but brunch wasn't. He was suspicious now. Good. He should be. The room was quiet when everyone arrived, but the tension buzzed like static in the... We gathered at Mr. Alden's office. Just me, my daughter, my youngest son, and last to arrive, my eldest with Melissa on his arm. He walked in wearing a tailored navy suit, one I didn't recognize. Melissa was in head-to-toe beige, her makeup flawless, lips pursed like she was attending a fashion launch, not a will reading. He greeted me with a nod. Not a hug. Not even eye contact. Melissa offered a quick, hope you're feeling better, before settling into a leather chair like she owned the place. Mr. Alden cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. As you know, we're here to read the revised will of James R. Langford. Per Mrs. Langford's instructions, this will reflects changes made shortly after his passing. He opened the folder. My children leaned forward. My eldest sat back, legs crossed, smiling slightly, like he already knew what was coming. He didn't. As of the revised document, all primary assets, including the Langford residence, retirement accounts, and heirloom possessions, are to be divided equally between Nora Langford and Daniel Langford, Mr. Alden read. Melissa's neck twitched. And to the eldest son, Benjamin Langford, he continued, is left a personal letter. That is all. The silence in the room became deafening. Benjamin blinked. I'm sorry, what? Mr. Alden didn't flinch. A sealed envelope. No additional assets or provisions. Benjamin laughed. It was sharp and humorless. This has to be a mistake. Melissa leaned forward. Excuse me, but that's completely unfair. Benjamin is the eldest. He's always been listed in your estate plan. I met her eyes, then turned to my son. You made your choice, I said quietly. I honored it. His voice rose. You can't be serious, Mom. You just disinherited me over one missed funeral. One funeral, I echoed. Your father's. His face turned a shade paler. Melissa opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. You didn't just miss it. You ignored it. You posted selfies while I buried your father. And when I called, you said he would understand. Benjamin looked around the room, expecting someone to speak up, to support him. No one did. Mr. Alden handed him the envelope labeled, since you had plans. He took it with trembling fingers, but didn't open it. No one said anything as I stood, gathered my bag, and walked out. Some choices cost more than money. It didn't take long for Melissa to start her campaign. Barely 2 days after the will reading, her Instagram story lit up with cryptic posts. Funny how some people love control more than they love family. Inheritance brings out the real toxicity in people. Greedy boomers strike again face with rolling eyes. She never mentioned my name directly, of course. She didn't have to. The people who knew us understood exactly who she was talking about. And the people who didn't, they were quick to fill in the blanks with whatever drama sounded most interesting. Then came the Facebook posts, longer, more emotional. A carefully crafted paragraph about how Benjamin had always done everything to please his parents, and how his loyalty had been punished. She wrote about how family is supposed to be unconditional, and how some people use money as a weapon instead of a legacy. Friends and acquaintances began to weigh in. Some commented with hearts and, "You're so strong, babe." Others messaged me privately. A few were bold enough to ask outright what happened. I said nothing. The story began to divide our circle. People I'd known for years started keeping their distance. Some neighbors smiled with just their mouths now. One even said, "I hope you can make peace before it's too late," as if I was the one who ruined everything. But there were others who stood beside me. My daughter Nora posted a quiet message of her own. Some people think showing up matters less than speaking out. Not in our family. Daniel sent me a meme of a raccoon digging through trash with the caption, "Melissa searching for dignity after that while reading." It made me laugh harder than I had in weeks. But Benjamin, he was relentless. The texts came daily. "You've torn this family apart. Dad wouldn't want this. I made one mistake and you've decided I'm worthless? Enjoy poisoning your own legacy." I didn't respond to any of them. Each message grew more manipulative, more desperate. It was no longer about grief or loss. It was about image, money, and control. He didn't mourn his father. He mourned his access. I watched his social media turn quieter over time. The likes dropped. The comments thinned. People moved on, and the drama lost its sparkle. I stayed silent through it all. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I'd already said everything that mattered. In the will. It was tucked away in the back of James's desk drawer, beneath a bundle of old family photos and a worn leather-bound notebook. I found it days after the will reading, while sorting through his things. A plain white envelope, sealed and labeled in his unmistakable handwriting. "For Ben, only if he doesn't come." I sat down, hands trembling as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, written in blue ink, raw, unedited, and full of a father's grief. "Ben, if you're reading this, it means you didn't come to my funeral. I want to believe something stopped you. A flat tire, a medical emergency, something out of your control. But deep down, I know that's not the case. You've grown into a man I no longer recognize. I don't know when the shift happened. Maybe when success started mattering more than people. Maybe when Melissa made you feel like we weren't enough. Or maybe when you decided that your time was too valuable for goodbyes. I sacrificed for you without question. I worked nights so you could study. I sold my tools to help you make your first business deal. I told myself love was enough. But today, if you skipped my funeral, then maybe I didn't teach you what love really looks like. Goodbye, son." Dad. By the time I reached the end, tears blurred my vision. The letter wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was just honest. And somehow that made it hurt more. I scanned the letter that evening. No message, no commentary. I just attached the image and sent it to Benjamin. He saw it within minutes. Read receipts told me so. And then silence. No response. No text. No, how could you do this? Or Dad didn't mean it. Just a digital void. For the first time in weeks, Melissa stopped posting. No more passive-aggressive rants. No more pity-bait birthday reels or jabs at entitled old people. They both went quiet. And in that silence, I found something better than revenge. I found truth. The kind that doesn't need to shout. Because that letter said everything I couldn't. Everything I didn't have to explain or justify. It came from the man Benjamin claimed to love, but didn't bother to bury. Let him sit with those words. Let him carry them like I carried his absence that day. Some silences are heavy. This one was deserved. Word gets around faster than people think, especially in their world, where appearances mattered more than truth, and connections were currency. Benjamin's business partner, Aaron, had been quiet after the funeral drama. But when the letter from his father started making quiet rounds in our family circle, someone forwarded it to Aaron. I didn't mean for that to happen, but I also didn't try to stop it. A week later, Aaron pulled out of their joint real estate venture. "Image matters," he told Benjamin. "If you can't show up for your own father's funeral, how can I trust you to show up for investors?" It hit Benjamin harder than he admitted. That deal was supposed to be his next big step. Without it, the numbers started looking tight. Then came Melissa's parents. They had always supported their daughter's choice, but now they were hearing whispers. People at their church asked awkward questions. Some even sent screenshots of Melissa's bitter social media posts and the fallout that followed. One woman even asked them, half joking, half not, how they raised someone okay with celebrating while her husband's father was being buried. At their next family dinner, the tension cracked. Her father asked Benjamin, "Do you really think a birthday was more important than a funeral?" Benjamin didn't answer. Melissa didn't defend him. Their marriage, already fraying from the inheritance loss, began to splinter in other ways. No more Instagram couple photos. No more matching holiday sweaters. She stopped talking about starting a family and started spending weekends at her sister's house. I heard it all through the grapevine. Meanwhile, I took Nora and Daniel on a trip James had always wanted us to take, an Alaskan cruise. Cold air, warm cabins, and views that made us stop and just breathe. It wasn't flashy or loud. It wasn't posted online for likes. It was healing. We toasted Dad under the stars on the ship's deck, wrapped in blankets. Nora cried. Daniel hugged me. I felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight since the funeral. Benjamin didn't know about the trip until someone sent him a picture of us at the glacier, smiling. He didn't text, didn't call, but he saw it, and he knew. While his world was shrinking, connections fading, support slipping away, we were out in the open sea, finally at peace. It wasn't revenge. It was reward. And it was earned. It had been 4 quiet months when Benjamin finally asked to meet. His message was short. Can we talk? Just us. Please. I hesitated. I didn't know him anything. But a part of me, maybe the mother in me, needed to see for myself what remained of the son I once knew. We met at a small cafe near the edge of town. He was already there when I arrived, seated by the window, fidgeting with the sleeve of his jacket. He looked thinner, tired. The confident smirk he always wore had been replaced by something unfamiliar, uncertainty. Mom, he stood, trying to hug me. I raised a hand. Let's just sit. He nodded quickly, swallowing hard. The first few minutes were filled with awkward silence, broken only by the clink of his spoon against his untouched coffee. Then he spoke. I'm sorry, he said, voice cracking. I should have been there. For Dad. For you. I messed up. I didn't say anything. I wanted to hear what came next. He took a shaky breath. Melissa, she was the one who pushed me not to go. Said it would ruin her birthday vibe. She told me you'd understand. I listened to her when I shouldn't have. I watched him closely. The way his hands trembled. The way he couldn't meet my eyes for long. I've left her, he added. I moved out 2 weeks ago. I realized she never really cared about this family. She just wanted what came with the name. I stayed silent. I want to fix things, he said, voice softer now. We're blood, Mom. You're all I have left. And there it was, the truth behind the performance. He was alone, probably broke, without his business partner, his wife, or the inheritance he once expected. This wasn't about grief. It was about desperation. I leaned forward slightly. You want my forgiveness? I asked. Yes, he said, eyes pleading. More than anything. Well, I said calmly, you already have it. His eyes lit up, a small spark of hope flashing across his face. But, I continued, forgiveness is free. Trust isn't. The hope flickered. Died. I don't hate you, Ben, I said. But I don't know you either. And right now, I don't trust the version of you sitting in front of me. He looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't. I stood, placed my coat over my shoulders. You walked away once. I made peace with that. I won't beg you to stay, and I won't offer you a second seat at a table you chose to abandon. Then I left. He didn't follow. After our meeting, I thought Benjamin might finally disappear quietly. But instead, he did what he always did, try to take a shortcut. A week later, my niece called me. Aunt Claire, Ben's been messaging people. He asked if I thought you were mentally okay. Like, if grief had made you act irrationally. I wasn't surprised. He hadn't gotten what he wanted from me, so now he was trying to stir doubt, poke holes in my choices, rebuild his image through whispers and pity. But this time, he underestimated the people around me. He messaged Nora and Daniel next, trying to appeal to them as the reasonable one. Said things like, Mom's acting out of emotion, not logic. She's letting resentment cloud her decision. It's not what Dad would have wanted. What he didn't expect was for them to show me every message. Nora replied bluntly, you don't get to weaponize grief after skipping the funeral. Daniel went further. He dragged up things I'd forgotten, or maybe chosen to ignore. How Ben used to mock Dad behind his back, calling him old-fashioned and stuck in his ways. How he once refused to help when our father was sick, saying he didn't have time to babysit a dying man. How he borrowed money from our parents 4 times and only ever paid it back once, with attitude. The siblings he thought he could manipulate were now the ones calling him out. One by one, cousins, aunts, even old family friends began piecing together the full story. Not the version he crafted, but the one that had been quietly simmering beneath the surface for years. Benjamin's reputation wasn't just damaged, it was unmasked. He wasn't the loyal son. He was the self-centered one who took and took, then cried victim when the well finally ran dry. The messages stopped after that. So did the vague social media posts. So did the birthday tributes. So did the public image he'd worked so hard to curate. And me? I felt calm. For the first time in years, the air in my home felt light. I wasn't carrying the guilt of enabling him, or the exhaustion of always hoping he'd change. I sat in the sunroom one afternoon with Nora and Daniel, sipping tea while we laughed about a memory from years ago, one where Dad had accidentally glued his hand to a birdhouse. It was peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because the truth had finally spoken louder than the noise. And it had spoken for me. The decision came to me one morning, as I looked at James's old military medals in the cedar box he kept by our bed. He never talked much about his service, never bragged or complained, but he was proud in quiet ways. Always stood when the anthem played. Always gave to the local Veterans Fund every year, even when money was tight. I knew what I had to do. With the help of Mr. Alden, I donated a large portion of James's estate, money, bonds, and even his classic car, to the local veterans program. But I did it anonymously, in his name only. In memory of Sergeant James R. Langford, who believed in serving others, even when no one was watching. I asked for no plaque, no event, no public credit for myself. Just a quiet gift. one that mattered. 2 weeks later, a story popped up on the town's online news page. Anonymous gift transforms local veterans fund. Community honors late hero. There was a photo of the old community center being renovated, with a caption beneath it. This donation will help house over 40 homeless vets. Benjamin saw it. I know he did. How? Because 3 minutes after the article went live, he viewed my profile picture on WhatsApp. 30 minutes after that, he sent a message. Was that from Dad's estate? Did you really do that? I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because finally, the world was honoring the man who deserved it most. And his name was everywhere, in headlines and handshakes, without any trace of Benjamin's presence. It wasn't revenge in the dramatic, fiery sense. It was something colder, cleaner, more final. Because Benjamin always cared about image, about legacy, about being seen. Now he had to watch the name he ignored at the end, Langford, be celebrated without him, remembered without him, respected without him. That evening, I sat on my porch as the sky faded into gold. The breeze was gentle, the trees swaying just enough to make the wind chimes sing. A glass of wine sat in my hand. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. Another message from Benjamin, still unread. I watched the sun slip behind the hills, quiet and slow. Some endings don't need doors slammed or words shouted. Sometimes the best closure is letting the world see what someone chose to walk away from, and never inviting them back.